joining us tonight. Before we get started on the panel, Byron is going to give us a brief history and overview of Jack's Solar Garden.
Yeah, thanks, Tasha. So, is this where I should have my, can I share screen?
I just made you a co-host.
Boom. Right. So, yeah. So, Jack's Solar Garden. We're a family-owned social enterprise. It's my father and I that own the business. My mother owns the farmland where we are building, or where we built Jack's Solar Garden over this past year. The land that we had out on our farm was this north field, where we've mainly been growing hay for the past 50 years. My grandfather, Jack, who Jack Solar Garden is named after, purchased our land back in '72 and mainly did haying, wheat, and having some livestock out on our land. So over the past few years, while I've been out here at the farm, I've been learning more about haying and just knowing that it doesn't pay the bills much. So in 2017, we decided to investigate doing community solar. And there were, sorry, I'm losing track here. So over the past few years, we were finding out that the economics of haying just wasn't cutting it anymore. We wanted to do something different. So we looked into solar and aspects of doing that. We had to work with Boulder County for over a year on figuring out what it would be like to have solar on our property, and then started working with the other panelists here to figure out what kind of fun adventure that we could do on our land. So what we did this past year was turn this our north field, which you see here, into this 1.2 megawatt solar array. Tasha, did you want to do any admin real quick?
Yeah, really quickly, everybody who's joining, we're really happy to have you here. Just make sure to unmute your mic as you join. Thank you.
So this is the 1.2 megawatt solar array that was built in 2020 on our north field. It's on an 8-acre field. It's just over 4 acres large of solar panels, with another acre of turning radius and switchgear and other metering equipment. So what I thought I would show here is a little image or a little video about how our panels move over the course of the day. So they're single axis tracking. They follow the sun east and west. And you can see on here how there's plenty of sun and shade that is provided to the land over the course of a week. This was taken during Thanksgiving, and so that's why we had snow on it. But hopefully when Sprout City Farms is getting to work during the summer, we shouldn't have any snow. So that weird if we did have it. Let's see. Let me move on past this. Oh, one more go around. I like to tell people to look at one little aisle and see how much sun and shade is in there over the course of a day. And oh man, how do I get past this now? Manual. And so what we've done out here on the farm since we built the solar array is have a handful of events. Like this one we did back in August. We have an artist on the farm that comes out each season. And our artist, Rachel Scala, decided that our artist on the farm for 2020 decided that she would have art on the farm day, where we had a handful of families that came out, painted some signs for our pollinator habitat around the perimeter of our solar array. And in the background of the bottom 2 pictures on your right, you can see that there's a jazz band in the background. So that was a lot of fun. And at the moment, we are in the process of selecting our artist on the farm for 2021, and that will become public in the next few weeks. We've also had an opening ceremony here where you can see Meg down in the bottom right-hand corner doing a coring sample there. We had a handful of legislators come out for our opening ceremony and along with a number of subscribers to Jack Solar Garden. So this is kind of what it looks like for having an event, about 60 people out underneath our panels. You can tell how high the panels are based on that tractor that's in that top middle picture. This was on our 8-foot side where the torque tube that turns the panels east and west is about 8 feet. But we intend to do more of these types of events alongside Sprout City Farms over the coming years. We have a variety of partnerships and a number of large subscribers. You can see we have NREL, Audubon Rockies, Arizona, University of Arizona, Colorado State University, and Sprout City Farms, as well as Colorado Agrivoltaic Learning Center as our partners. And our large subscribers are In the Flow Cannabis Company, Boulder County Government, Premier Members Credit Union, the City of Boulder, Western Disposal, and we will have another one to announce soon. So after Sprout City Farms has been at work for a handful of years, this is what it's going to look like, right, Meg? Just lots of beautiful vegetables out underneath the panels. We'll have beekeepers out here, tours going on, and it'll be a nice place for community groups to come out for tours and have events out here on our land. So that's my brief on Jack Solar Garden.
Thanks, Byron. That was a great presentation. So as many of you know from the event description, our panelists today are actually answering questions that were submitted by you all, our audience. So let's get started. So Byron, you talked about this a little bit in your presentation, but you know, why did you decide to build a solar farm? What kind of initiated this idea?
Our family wanted to do something else with our land to actually have revenue from our land as opposed to having a farm that we sunk money into. So as I mentioned before, Hain doesn't really pay the bills anymore for us on 24 acres in Boulder County. The Hain process that we would do over the years would cover almost the combination of our property tax plus water rights plus utility. So no additional funds to go to the grocery store on. It just seemed weird that our land couldn't do more than that. And so that's what led us down the path of trying to find something that was more beneficial to our family. And then we figured, well, we could also do something that's more interesting for our community to do as well.
It's amazing. And like, what's the cost of building this style of solar plant as compared to like a traditional array that doesn't have any agricultural elements under it?
Building an agrivoltaic system does cost more in that you're raising the panels up higher. So that means that there is more steel involved. There is more labor costs for having more people needing to hoist the panels up higher. So as I mentioned earlier, let's see, can I point at that? Okay, the solar panel that's behind my shoulder right there, that one looks like it's about 6 feet high. The standard panels, if they're south facing fixed, that would be maybe only a few feet off the ground at best. Whereas most single axis tracking systems that I've seen are roughly 4 feet where the torque tube turns the panels. Whereas the majority of our panels are at 6 feet, and then we have an additional third of our panels that are up at 8 feet. So the steel costs more, human labor costs more. So an agrivoltaic system can be between 5 and maybe upwards 20% additional cost for having these additionalities to it.
Thank you. And our next question is for Greg. Greg here is like really a professional and a research person at the farm who knows a lot about agrivoltaics. And from my personal experience, this concept is new to me. So Greg, can you give the audience just an overview of agrivoltaics?
Yeah, sure. When we kind of worked up this concept, it was really just mashing together the words agriculture and photovoltaics, which is the fancy word for solar panels. So it's literally a mashup of these two land uses in the same place. Part of why we came to this idea is that our climate is getting a little bit more intense in terms of warmer summers, these heat waves that kind of rock some of our systems, including our food systems, and all those things like that. And longer periods of drought really turn up the volume on the temperature stress and moisture stress that plants feel. And so as we've thought about how to make a more sustainable, growing future, one option is to co-locate with renewable energy, because the plants get to reside in the shade of those solar panels, which at those, winter and spring edges where we get a little bit of cold snap still, but then we have mostly decent temperatures, being under that solar array may provide some frost protection. And the other time is just think about if you spilled your water bottle in a shady environment versus a sunny environment. Where would it stay wet longer? In the shadier place, right? Because it's getting less direct sun. And so from some of our work, we found that you can really slow down the evaporation process, which is really great if you're growing food with a little bit of water input, because it means every time you irrigate those crops or every time it rains, the ground will stay wet longer, because you're under the shade of solar rays, to allow those vegetables to the fruits to take up that water and use it. So we're just being more efficient with some of our resources.
And what will you and the University of Arizona be researching at the site? It sounds like you talked about a lot of different factors that are impacted by agrivoltaics.
Yeah, sorry, my kid is also just coming in the background, but you can't see her. Hello, thank you. It's dinner time here in Arizona, like it is there. So what kind of things we'll be studying? Well, we got funding from the National Science Foundation, right there, to study how well this work, this co-location of solar and renewable energy and food production would work up in Colorado. We've seen really great examples of increased production or increased water efficiency down here in Arizona, but clearly we're a hotter and more arid climate. And so we know that if we apply some of these principles up there, it will change the microclimate, like that area under the solar panels, but what kind of impact will that have on the food production? And so they said, that's a really great question. We want to see more sustainable solutions across the West. You should just take what you're doing there and co-locate it somewhere else and just make those comparisons. So we're going to be studying everything from, how moist the soil stays after every irrigation event. We'll be looking at the carbon content of that soil, and so how much carbon sequestration can happen in this system. We'll be looking, by tracking y'all's work, how well fruit production happens in some of our fruiting crops and biomass in terms of our leafy greens, like how much are we able to produce here. And the last part, for those more interested in the renewable energy than the Sprout City Farm side of things, is solar panels can get kind of hot, just like us. So anytime it's above about 77 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. So think about that for a second. How often is it warmer than 77 when it's sunny? So in those times, your solar panels are underperforming a little bit because their efficiency goes down with temperature. So if we can actually help cool the solar panels through the water loss from the plants, we can help with their efficiency. And so we also want to get towards monitoring some of that.
How big is this site that you'll be monitoring at Jack's Solar Garden?
Yeah, great question. So this is one of those examples of true partnerships with y'all and Meg's lead and under Byron's command. So y'all will be farming multiple acres, and we'll only be farming about one of those acres. And our hope is that we can stretch our research, in terms of getting a sense of the production across all of those spaces. But Byron has allowed us to have 1 acre of this that y'all will be growing fruit on, to see, once we understand the system, how can we reduce the irrigation amount? Can we dial back the irrigation a little bit? And how much does that impact some of our food production? Now, y'all are still producing this food to bring it back to community. And so we don't want to negatively impact that too much. But by studying it on a smaller area, we'll be able to do some science at the same time.
This is really interesting. One question we actually had from the audience was, have you found that the construction or the development of these solar panels harm the topsoil? Are there any concerns around that?
Oh, great question. So Jordan here on the call has looked at this across this agrivoltaics at a more national level, but I can say from our work across Arizona that no. And some of the installations where you're using big machinery to install the masts that hold up the solar panel, you get some more compaction, but usually that can be dealt with pretty simply. Nothing in terms of like nutrient depletion or, over compacting the soil. It's all things that can be readily fixed. So all of the agrivoltaics work we've been doing is organic. We utilize, compost integration to balance out the nutrient levels in the soil, and we stand back and watch it go crazy.
And is an agrivoltaics field something you can do with pre-existing solar plants, or do you have to kind of replant or pre-existing farms, and do you have to kind of replant everything after the solar array is built up?
Yeah, chances are, if you're already a farmland, then you can introduce solar and become an agrivoltaic system. Really, the challenge there is, you do have machinery coming out there and, rolling over it. And so you are going to get some compaction and it will mess things up. But will you have to redo a bunch of work to bring it back to a productive agricultural system? We're not seeing that to be the case. We do some tilling right afterwards, but mostly that's so that we can make sure that we've incorporated plenty of good nutrients back into the topsoil. But beyond that, no. And I worried about ripping up wires or these sorts of things. Clearly, you need to work with the solar developer and make sure you know where they've been doing all of their trenching. But most oftentimes they trench way deeper than we need to go. And so it's more about just being careful as you approach those zones where they have their cables running. But otherwise, we're not having any problems.
That's awesome to hear. It sounds like there's a lot of kind of potential for this type of agricultural practice to proliferate. So next I have a few questions for Meg. How is Sprout City Farms going to integrate agrivoltaics into our programming?
We are just really interested in what this can do for farmers. How can we maximize land use, kind of double stack the functions? Greg was talking about the microclimate that's created under the panels and how that can really be a boon, especially in this crazy climate that we're in here with dealing with some of the temperature swings and the frost events, hopefully hail, hopefully. I even hesitate to say that word. But we're excited to see how the panels can have a little bit more protective environment for the crops. But then also, through studying this over a couple of years and working with Byron on the numbers, how can this be brought to other farms? Really being intentional about putting together SOPs, standard procedures for growing veggies under solar panels, so that this could be shared widely as a practice with other farms that would be interested in installing a solar array alongside their food production, so that it helps the crops, and then you have additional revenue from the energy that's generated.
And this is another question that came up from our audience. How do you get away without using machinery to plow a field of this size?
We were just talking about that this morning again. So we will be breaking ground. Every farm that we've built, we do an initial till because we don't want to be fighting the most intense weed pressure all season if we don't have to. So we do one initial till to break it up. In this case, that was an alfalfa field for 50 years. So we want to get the alfalfa and the grass and the weeds out of there. And then we operate no-till after that. So at all of our farms that we've built that are like 1 to 1.5 acres in size, they're all operated no-till. We use a broad fork to prep the soil for planting, but we do as little disturbance as possible to the soil. And that's really shown that is really increasing the health of the soil and the plants that we grow. Our oldest site is 11 years old, so it's been no-till for 11 years, and it's super productive. So we just try not to interfere with nature that much, and it really does its thing pretty well.
Did you mention our incubation plots?
No, I wasn't sure if that was coming up. So we really are excited about this project for all of the research components, but another thing on the education side is farmer training. We've heard for years and years from interns and folks that have worked with us, and also just from being in the movement and studying the barriers to entry into agriculture, that one of the biggest challenges that new first generation farmers face is access to land. Access to land, capital to get started. There's huge startup costs. And then most farmers nowadays that are getting going are first generation farmers. So they're not inheriting a family farm. They don't have a network of folks that they grew up with, you know, that can lend them support and tools and things. So we want to try to set people up for success as much as possible. So we'll be carving up a couple of acres at this site into incubator plots for farmers in training. So folks that know that they want to start a farm business and they need a leg up, they need some training wheels there. They'll be able to access a plot of land and share tools and resources with us, and then get mentorship from our experienced farm staff. And we'll help, you know, introduce them more into the movement and launch their businesses and set them up for success.
And Jack's Solar Garden is probably our biggest site to date, right? So how it's going to grow a lot of food. So can you talk a little bit about where all of this delicious food is going to go in Longmont?
Yes, we've got some great ideas and partnerships being built. So Sprout City Farms has always had a big focus on food security and food access for lower income households, especially, who struggle more with having affordable access to fresh, healthy food. And so for this initial year, this year at Jack's, we are focusing on distributing CSA shares at no cost. So these are weekly shares of food to families that have SNAP and WIC benefits. So SNAP, for those who don't know, stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's what used to be called food stamps. And then WIC is for women with infants and children. So specifically moms with kids under the age of 5. So we're working with Boulder County Public Health to do referrals to families in those programs so they can get a free CSA share from us. We'll also be doing work trade shares, so folks can volunteer a certain number of hours on the farm in exchange for a discounted share of food. And then we'll be distributing the rest of it through the Longmont Farmers Market, where we also give half price to everybody that's buying with their SNAP dollars. So those are the plans for right now. We'll be expanding it in the future as we figure out how much food we can grow there. But yeah, we've always had a really big focus on food access and getting as much of the harvest as possible to those who really need it the most.
This is really exciting. I'm actually going to kind of shift back to some of the research that's being done at the site with a couple questions for Jordan. So Jordan, how will the National Renewable Energy Laboratory be engaging with Jack's Solar Garden?
Thanks, Tasha. NREL will be very much engaged with Jack's Solar Garden. We take a very strong interest in Jack's Solar Garden, partly because it's going to be one of the largest research facilities on agrivoltaics in the entire country. And as a little bit further background, NREL has been looking at agrivoltaics in some sense since 2010, so over a decade now, starting with one of our sites on NREL's campus. And what started out as one site looking at very small things has really blossomed into this national scale study where we have 25 different sites that are located across the country where we're coordinating research on various elements of agrivoltaics. And this could be growing vegetables like Sprout City Farms will be doing at Jack's Solar Garden, It also includes sheep grazing and cattle grazing. It also includes having pollinator habitat underneath the arrays and supporting beekeeping operations and honey production with Jack's Solar Garden is that we'll actually have elements of all of those types of configurations and ground cover that we're going to be testing at Jack's Solar Garden. We're not going to have actual cows or sheep on site, but we will be having the vegetation, the pasture grass, and testing out the pasture grass for those types of animal operations. But again, Jack's Solar Garden will be the largest research site on agrivoltaics in the country. And we've got a great collection of researchers and partners. So in addition to Greg from University of Arizona, we've also got experts from Colorado State University, including Alan Knapp, Megan Shapansky, and Christopher Toy, as well as other experts at NREL, including James McCall and Brenda Beatty. So we've got really an all-star cast and crew of researchers. They're going to be spread around 7 different zones on site, all looking at different research aspects, but it's all being using consistent methods and consistent monitoring approaches, which is really going to, I think, push the field forward and really provide information to, as Meg said, to future farmers who might want to know, can I do agrivoltaics? Will agrivoltaics work for me? We're hoping that the insights we get from Jack's Solar Garden will give clear, quantitative answers to those farmers.
And you talked about a lot of different elements that you'll be monitoring. What kind of monitoring or control systems are in place for this project?
Another great question. So we are, in addition to the work supported by the National Science Foundation, we're also working with the Innovative Irrigation Consortium coming out of Colorado State to help really fully instrument the site so we can look at things like soil moisture, microclimate conditions, wind speed, panel temperature changes, and how those affect panel outputs. And so each zone, which will have different vegetation, will be instrumented with using the same types of equipment and collecting the same type of data that we can all then bring together and analyze and really lead to those insights that are they're going to be relevant for you if you want to do a grazing operation, or if you want to grow tomatoes, or if you want to grow blackberries, whatever it might be. We're hoping to provide those sorts of that common data and insights that people are going to be looking for.
So I'll eventually give each panelist a chance to answer some of these questions. But Jordan, what do you think or anticipate being the biggest challenge in operating this farm?
So I think that one of the biggest challenges will be containing our excitement for how so much we've been looking forward to this for so long now, to get the shovels in the ground, to get the seeds in the ground. But really, I think one of the biggest challenges is because we are doing this work in a coordinated fashion, where Sprout City Farms as a production farming organization is going to be partnering with researchers. To me, it's a matter of making sure we have really good communication and really good coordination to make sure that what we do and what the researchers do and what the Sprout City Farms and the farmers do is well aligned, such that we can, as Greg mentioned, that we can actually get a lot of really good data out of this to really lead to those insights on a much bigger scale over what types of crops grow best. So if we can come out of this saying what types of crops, do tomatoes work better, and are they better directly under the panel or a little bit aside from the panel? Getting those sorts of insights will be really beneficial and essential. And it's just going to be a matter of us all coordinating together and making sure we're all on the same page.
What about you, Meg? What are the biggest challenges you anticipate?
Sorry, I'm having mouse trouble with my computer. I mean, this is a giant experiment, and we don't really know exactly how it's going to go. So we're just throwing ourselves in it. But I think our basic idea is we want to look at some of the variety trials and research that's already been done with CSU and Greg and folks, but also just do a normal crop plan like we have done at our other sites, and just really write everything down, test everything, track it all. We were just talking with another grad student at CSU earlier today about all the parameters that we want to be keeping track of, so that we can learn from everything from season to season. So I think the biggest challenges are just that there's so many unknowns, but we're okay with that. We like to trailblaze and ask a lot of questions.
Greg, what about you? Any challenges?
Sorry, I was answering Kristen's question in text, which I'll keep doing in a minute. Yeah, I think one of the challenges for me is learning all about food production in Colorado, because we have such a different timeline. I was asking if I could come up there during my kids' spring break this week, and then Byron noted that the ground is still frozen. They're getting record snow. So part of it is, as we think about how to create semi-uniform ideas and thoughts, and at least a coordinated plan across the entire US about how to, better make advances in this idea of agrivoltaics, it's remembering that there are such different timelines for each of these places around the country. And as Jordan said, just coordinating everything, because as Jordan said, this will be the largest agrivoltaics research site in the US. You want to make the most of that. You want to make the most of every opportunity to produce food because of all the missions that Meg just described. You want to do the right things so that you can make comparisons in that same place of Jack's Solar Garden. So you can say, this is the impacts in case you want to grow pasture grasses in Colorado. This is the impacts if you want to do non-irrigated food production in Colorado, which is a 1/4 acre of land devoted here. This is how much water you can reduce in your usage, but still maintain mostly the same level of production, which is in our area. If you're afraid of making all of that food production still happen, this is how you can best operate an apiary or a beekeeping system, or even more low key. This is how you can co-produce lots of pollinator-friendly plants. So even if you stop doing active farming, you can still be a really good partner for all the farms around the solar array. And I think that's my current fear. The fear going before this week was finding enough money to do all of that research. But the excitement that I first mentioned with NSF has been matched under Jordan's efforts locally to bring all this irrigation research into play. And so now we're just continue to chase down those funds to enable us to do this work. But the fact that we have a food management group in Sprout City Farms is a huge relief. The fact that we have funding to conduct the irrigation research is a huge relief. The fact that we have some funding now to monitor all of those different components of the system so that we can say, how well is this working or not working? Whew, just got some of that funding this week, right? So the momentum is building, and it's about to be a hold on to the rails moment so we can keep coordinated.
Fantastic. Byron, your family owns this land, so I wanted to give you a chance to answer the challenge, any challenges you may anticipate as well.
Everyone's challenges are our challenges. And we have more on top of that. So figuring out how to, thanks, Meg, figuring out the irrigation. We have a lot of ditch water, and that's going to take coordination with my neighbors as well as ditch company to make sure that we have water available for over the course of the season, that we're able to coordinate the irrigation throughout the property, making sure all that irrigation equipment's kept up. Oh man, this list goes on. Thinking about having tractors and vehicles and people with tools out underneath glass panels, that is our livelihood, and that we have a large uh, loan that to pay off. So any damage to the solar array hurts our economics. That's a risk that that comes to my mind frequently. Um, and then we'll just have challenges of having people out here on the farm on a regular basis, not just with Scott City Farms and the researchers, but also with Colorado Agrivoltaic Learning Center, of having tours of hopefully at least 1,000 people coming out to our farm this year, walking around, learning about what's going on, keeping people safe, keeping people interested and engaged throughout a tour. All those are challenges and concerns.
Well, on a brighter
Oh,
note,
it's going to be fun.
oh, sorry. Thank you, Byron. On a oh, Meg, you have something?
Well, I just meant to say one of our challenges, which is that this farm, unlike the other sites that we've built, is even more dedicated to education. So at our other sites, we've set up a model that's relatively financially stable or sustaining from year to year. But because of the focus on education in the incubator program that we'll have at this site, it's diverging from that financially sustainable model. So we'll always be looking for support to keep the education going. I just wanted to put that out there.
And definitely on a brighter, hopefully less anxiety producing note, my last question for all of our panelists today are like, what are the milestones you're most looking forward to meeting when it comes to this site? We're in the beginning stages and there's so much happening, but what are you most looking forward to? Meg, do you want to?
Okay, first.
Oh,
put me in. Yeah. I want to see 1 year done of this. Like come November, I am going to be thrilled of seeing like whatever challenges that we figured out over the course of the summer. Come November, it's going to be exciting to see and look back on everything that we accomplished this year. That's what I'm looking forward to, and we should have a party. That's what I want.
Jordan, how about you?
I'm excited for the very first seeds to go in the ground. That's the milestone. I think once we have the seeds in the ground, I trust the expertise of the Sprout City Farms farmers, and I think we'll do great research. But just getting that first seed in the ground will be a major relief.
Greg.
Well, I was also going to say that first seed in the ground because that would mean that it was happening. So that's taken. I was going to say that first harvest, but maybe that's Meg's. But if it's not, I would say that first, again, that end of the season when we see all of that information having been collected. I know I've got quite a few undergraduate and graduate researchers coming up from the University of Arizona who are ready to jump all over this. We've coordinated when we'll do our measurements here and when we'll be coming up there for that research. And so I think when we first arrive and everyone gets to see what I've been talking about actually in person will be fantastic.
And last but not least, Meg.
There are too many things, but I will say that we are really nerding out already at all of the potential, like all the little weather sensors and checking soil moisture and temperature and all of those things. We've never had that many fancy gadgets on our farms before, so that's really exciting. Even though it's been said, just breaking ground is just going to be so awesome. And we are doing that for those of y'all that are local on April 17th, as long as we don't get 3 feet of snow that day, with golden shovels going in the ground. So you can come and rejoice with us then.
We'll be there.
Well, folks, this concludes our panel tonight, but don't worry, you didn't get to meet all of our partners at this site tonight, but you will in the future. We're planning on doing this loads more times. So stay tuned for that information from our organization. And as you know, Jack's Solar Garden is as you may know, Jack's Solar Garden is the fourth farm that Sprout City Farms has built, and we couldn't have gotten to this point without our community and without the support of our community. So tonight marks the first day of our crowdfunder to build the infrastructure for this site that will support it for years to come. And our goal is to raise $15,000 to support our work at Jack's Solar Garden. And to kick off our crowdfunder, you lucky folks will be getting the first viewing of our crowdfunding video. So just give me a second and I'll share my screen so everybody can see the video.
Sprout City Farms is an urban farming nonprofit that started in Denver in 2010. Our vision is to build a network of community farms that make neighborhoods resilient, root farmers in the city, and build a thriving local food system. Our farms use regenerative practices to grow thousands of pounds of food each year and are a platform for education, food access, and community programs. 10 years ago, Sprout City Farms seeded our first urban community farm on the grounds of the Denver Green School in partnership with Denver Public Schools. Since that time, we've built 2 more farms, Mount Air Park Community Farm in partnership with the City of Lakewood, and Dahlia Campus Farm with the Mental Health Center of Denver. We've grown our network of farms throughout Metro Denver, and we're ready to expand our programs to a new community. We'll be breaking ground this spring at our new site in Longmont. We're partnering with Jack's Solar Garden, a family enterprise set out to transform how land is used. As you can see, they've turned their family farm into a field of solar panels. But it doesn't stop there. You might notice these panels are unusually high off the ground. That's because while they're harvesting the sun, we'll be harvesting food grown underneath.
We at Sprout City Farms are all about giving purpose to underutilized land. And the space underneath these solar panels is not only unused, but it also provides a promising microclimate for optimal plant growth. Jack's Solar Garden will be the largest site in the country to employ this model of vegetable production. Alongside research partners at National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Colorado State University, and University of Arizona, we will test and improve a system for growing food under solar panels in this arid climate. We will then share our findings with the wider world and pass on this model of food and energy production, a farming model that can help solve our climate crisis.
In addition to growing food for the Longmont community, we'll be setting aside a few acres to serve as an incubator for aspiring farmers. Update farmers will have a 1/4 acre of land each, on which to develop their business plans, test out their ideas, learn from each other's successes and failures, and continue to hone their production skills under the mentorship of experienced farm staff, all without the risk of completely setting out on their own. The biggest barriers for first-generation farmers are difficulty accessing land, high upfront capital costs, and lack of networks and training. By placing incubator plots alongside a working farm, we can share resources and provide the necessary infrastructure and tools, ensuring that new farmers can focus on gaining the skills needed for their businesses to survive this challenging industry.
Sprout City Farms has watched many meaningful connections grow out of our farms over the last 11 years. Students experience every step in the journey from seed to fork. Community members come together to learn and share skills related to growing and enjoying food. Neighborhoods are empowered to create their own local food system, and future urban farmers gain the knowledge to feed communities, grow the local economy, and heal our planet. We need your support to transform Jack's Solar Garden into a working farm. So much goes into creating the infrastructure that will support the farm for years to come, and we need your help to get started. Please pledge today, because if everyone gives what they can, we can build this farm. So I hope you all enjoyed that. And I hope you all enjoyed our panel. Even though we didn't have enough time to feature all of our awesome partnerships, like I said earlier, there will be more opportunities in the future where we can sit down with them and dive deeper into the work that's happening at Jack's Solar Garden. Really quickly, I am going to put our donation page information up on our, I'm going to share the screen with our donation information so you can see where to give and more ways to engage with us. And we believe Jack's Solar Garden has so much potential for the Longmont community, Boulder County, Colorado, and the nation. And if you think the same, please support us. Please support our mission today and donate. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you to everybody who joined us today for our panel and all of our audience members who joined us on Zoom and on Facebook. Our groundbreaking ceremony is on April 15th. Or April 17th, excuse me. So mark your calendars for a save the date, and I hope we get to see you there. Hopefully it will be a lot warmer and not have 5 feet on the ground of snow. So I hope we get to see you there. This concludes our event for tonight. Please stay safe and stay warm, folks. We loved having you here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. That was cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Night.